Welcome back and welcome to our media panel. Good morning to Bill Ralston, listener columnist, and media commentator Dr. Brian Edwards. Welcome to you both. Bill, if I can start with you, there's been quite a bit of reshuffling going on, hasn't there? Radio Live's just announced it has Sean Plunkett in now for Michael Laws.
Yep.
Quite a coup.
Well, Radio Live is positioning itself, I think, quite well. It's never quite got off the ground as much as its owners probably would have liked, but I think now, in putting Plunkett up against Leighton Smith on ZB, you've got a real difference. Michael Laws was very similar in pitch to Leighton, and of course in the afternoon drive show you've got Duncan Garner coming in against Larry Williams, and again quite a clear difference between the two hosts. So you know they're giving the public a bit more of a choice, a real choice.
I don't think it'll work, and I think there's a sort of pattern you can see with Radio Live where they keep searching for the saviour, you know. So a whole lot of different high-profile people have been brought in, including, of course, Paul Henry. And this doesn't seem to be working for them, you know. There must be something structurally that they need to do to fix all of that. The fascinating thing about Radio Live is the amount of news it generates from what happens on its programmes. You're just endlessly reading things.
Very lively station.
Very lively station, and a very good station to listen to. But the ratings are poor. And I don't think putting someone else in, another new boy, I was one of their new boys. That was a total disaster, I may tell you. Yeah.
Well, anyone that appears on this programme, Plunkett, Garner, your good self, you've all been on Radio
Live. We've all been there. No wonder it's not working.
No, not at all.
But I don't know the answer to this. But certainly they have great difficulty. And I think you've also got to take into account that ZB has this very loyal audience that stays with it right through the day and into the evening. Very hard to break that.
I would think, though, that Plunkett would draw quite a few listeners.
Yeah, I think he's come off Wellington ZB. So with a networked program like Radio Live has, there's a Wellington audience that will come to him.
Well, they thought Paul Henry would draw a big audience. He did increase their audience, but it wasn't a big audience.
So I find this quite remarkable across commercial radio. When you look at the two networks, so you have, in breakfast, you have Marcus Lush up against Mike Hosking, then you have Sean Plunkett soon up against Leighton Smith, you have Willie and JT up against Danny Watson, and you have Duncan Garner shortly up against Larry Williams. I find it remarkable in commercial radio that in that sort of 6 a.m. to 7 p.m, there's no room for a woman.
Well, ZB is a right-wing station. If you look at all those people they've got on there, they're all right-wingers, except Kerry Woodham, who I would imagine is middle of the road. But I take your point, it's quite true.
I did hear Susan Wood, though, in a temporary capacity, filling in for Larry Williams, and Sam Hayes does some work too on Radio Live and does a good job. But I guess you're guilty here of tokenism if you just put a woman on to a certain degree. They tried that on Radio Live, I think, with Maggie Barry. How do you go about developing...
Maggie Barry was just a token.
Well, how do you go about developing women, you know, as broadcasters? There you go, Bill. Tell us how it's done.
I think they just come through quite naturally.
But clearly they don't.
Well, not in radio and television. If you look at television, obviously women are very well represented, if not over-represented, you know, numerically. You know, I don't know what's happened in terms of national radio, Radio New Zealand National, as they call it in that elongated name, you know, there are a number of women there, almost in the majority in their voices.
Well, you've got Mary Wilson and Kim Hill and Catherine Ryan, don't you?
Sorry, it may have something to do with the fact that these are talkback programmes. And the hosts of these programmes have to be extremely aggressive, and they don't actually have to think very much. So women who do think probably don't really belong in that sort of environment.
I think women may be too rational to do talkback.
Too rational to do talkback.
Fantastic. We do have Pam Corkery sometimes, though, I think, on some of the channels as well.
Rational.
Right, let's move it along. Jimmy Savile and what's going on with the BBC. This is remarkable. I mean, this is... I don't even think it's arguably the most esteemed broadcaster. I think it's fair to say the BBC is. This is remarkable, the scenario that they've found themselves in.
Yes, and the way they handled it, or rather failed to handle it.
Yes.
You can actually sort of see their difficulty. They had this man who was a huge star on the BBC, and who was greatly loved, actually, by people, and who was dealing with children. Not only that, he'd been knighted by the Queen, he'd been knighted by the Pope.
Yes.
You know.
And they were allegations
and they were about to
300
broadcast a
children.
tribute programme to him.
Yes.
So you've got to realise that's certainly a difficult scenario. The problem is that people in the BBC had known about Jimmy Savile going right back to the 70s. Nobody had ever done anything about it over all that time. And there were, I think, 4 police investigations of him during that time. Today we read in the paper there are 300 complaints from people who say they were victimised by this.
And he's a children's presenter.
Yeah,
a children's presenter. Well, yeah,
but the most extraordinary thing is that they pulled the Newsnight programme that was investigating Jimmy Savile not because it was defamatory, because the man was dead and couldn't sue, because they didn't want to disrupt their Christmas schedule. The great thing is, though, and good on BBC, I suppose, that the story of the BBC's cover-up was broken by a BBC program, Panorama. So
yes, and it was on the BBC.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to admire that. There's the occasional light touch here. His family have had his headstone removed from the graveyard where he was buried. It's been broken up and sent to the tip. All right, and that was sort of strange enough, except that I read that the epitaph that was on there was, "It was good while it lasted." And I thought, that's interesting. So the whole thing is very, very strange. But it's a horrifying case, really, because it seems that many of these charities that he supported, young people's charities, kids who are disabled and so on, he appears to have picked those to allow him to do the things he wanted to do.
Yes, and it's interesting too that, this is in an era, we're talking about, this began 40 years ago when people were far less likely to come out and talk about abuse than they are now. Tell us too, if you can, but explain to us the role that celebrity plays in this as well, and the reluctance perhaps to oppose someone.
Well, networks spend a lot of time and a lot of money building up brands, people as brands that bond loyalty to that channel. So they have a huge investment in someone like Jimmy Savile, even after he's dead, because they're still running tribute shows to him and everything else. And so they'll work to basically protect those brands, to save themselves money and to keep making money. And the BBC may be non-commercial, but it's still a major cash earner in its other programmes.
I think the media will carry some sort of blame for this as well. You know, that it is quite difficult. You've got to be very secure in your facts to accuse a national figure of being a paedophile. You're going to have to really have the evidence of that. And as you rightly say, in those days, most girls who went and told their mums that they had been molested by Jimmy Savile would have been told off for making things up. That's how it worked
Different
then.
era,
And
wasn't it?
I think it's only recently with the Roman Catholic thing and the paedophile priests that has really now changed.
OK, let's look at how Russel Norman performed on the show this morning. What did you make of him, Bill? What do you think? How articulate is he? And he's been called, the real leader of the opposition. What do you make of his performance?
He's a passionless guy, though, isn't he? His delivery is really flat. He's taken himself into that whole policy wonk area to try and show that the Greens really have something more than just the environment to talk about. But I don't think stealing social credit policy is really going to help. But in terms of his delivery, much more fluent, obviously, than David Shearer. But I don't think he could rouse a crowd to wild applause.
What advice would you give to him?
No, I absolutely agree with that. He lacks warmth. Well, it seems to me he lacks warmth. And curiously enough, he appears to lack passion. And that's a strange thing. But I think, as Bill rightly says, the comparison with Shearer is very much in his favour, But the interesting thing, of course, is that the Greens have got Materia Touré as well. So it's a very good combination, actually, because she's got lots of passion and lots of warmth.
Well, because they don't want to look extreme, I think Materia Touré has actually been locked in a small broom closet in the back of their caucus room. There's been a conscience, over the last 3 years, a conscious move by the Greens to make themselves look respectable and appealing to the middle class. They're still probably just as barking mad as they always were.
I'll take your point, but she still appears quite a lot on television and radio.
Yeah, not as much as Russell does these days.
OK, so what does Russel Norman have to do if he's to really step up and position himself potentially as, the leader of the opposition?
Actually, I don't think he has to do anything. I mean, I think that's sort of going to happen by default. It's already happening. I mean, it is the case you mentioned in your introduction that increasingly the media are going to him as though he were the leader of the opposition. And he is, in a sense now, the de facto leader of the opposition.
Well, not really. He'll have to win more seats. The Greens have to win more seats than Labour next time round.
But how does he come across as being more aspirational then, possibly? What would your advice be him? Or can you train that into someone?
Well, I don't think you can train it into somebody, but I think he just needs to relax. He's adopted a public persona that he believes looks very serious and straight and everything else. You get Guy relaxed, give him a beer, have a chat after the show, as I've done in the past, and he's a normal person, and he just needs to actually get back to being normal again.
I think that's very difficult. So the two trainers here might disagree, but I actually think that is very difficult to do. As I've said about Shearer, I think Shearer cannot change the way he is. That's the way his brain operates. And I think that Russel Norman is probably the same. And I think what might happen, if you try to do that, he might start to look quite artificial. If he's suddenly Mr. Nice...
artificial now.
Yes, and he's Australian.
Yep. I think John Key's strength is that he very quickly realised he could not be anybody else other than himself, so he just made a virtue out of being himself, and that's worked for him.
All right, we have to leave it there. Dr. Brian Edwards and Bill Ralston, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.